The views expressed on this program do not necessarily represent those of Revive FM or its management.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Muazzam Ali Sandhu, and you are watching and listening Revive FM 94.0. Today we are going to discuss about the safety and security issues, and with our guest, the London Assembly member Unmesh Desai, who is the chair of Crime and Police in London Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest will join very soon. Meanwhile, I will tell you about the crime and safety and security issues in the community. There are so many incidents which are concerned for many of us, for our families, for the community members. It happens a lot here during the pandemic. We all aware that during the lockdown, the people are staying at home most of the time. They are relying on the deliveries. They're doing online shoppings and these things. But yes, of course, many incidents happens during this time, and that is very concerned. The Ladies and gentlemen, according to Office of the National Statistics, the overall crime rates are in decline, with total police recorded crime decreasing by 4% in England and Wales in the 12 months ending June 2020 to approximately 5.8 million offences. Crime levels from April to June 2020 were much lower than in April to June 2019, with 19% less crime due to the COVID-19 lockdown. However, during this period, police has recorded sharp rises of drug offences, street crimes, anti-social behavior incidents, knife crime, and youth violence have also risen in many parts of the UK. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have our guest, Unmesh Desai, today. Please welcome our guest. Hello, Unmesh.
Hello, good afternoon.
Very good afternoon. Thank you very much, Unmesh. We know you're very busy in many things, and you spared your time during this very busy schedule.
No, it's always a delight to be on your show, and good afternoon to your viewers as well. I love taking part in the show with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Unmesh. Unmesh, I was just telling our viewers that there are so many incidents happens, and the people are concerned about the safety and security issues. Recently, in Waltham Forest, Leighton, a young child was stabbed to death at the time when two young boys came to pick up delivery from his door. And also one stabbing happened in Barking and Dagenham near the Barking Park when the airlift ambulance participated as well in the response unit. And also yesterday, one incident happened in Waltham Forest. I was just informed by one of my colleagues. There's so many other things are happening. The women are also concerned about their safety and security after the incident of Sarah in South London. Women are concerned by walking home alone during night time. So many things. I want your response on that. Then we gradually discuss few things on this.
I think the first thing I should say is that our thoughts continue are with and continue with the family of Sarah Everard, and also the young man who lost his life in Walthamstow, and indeed with all victims of crime, particularly violent crime. Very, some of the sad events. I appreciate that, people have a genuine fear about crime. So let's not talk about statistics. I want to talk more about what the police are doing or should be doing, but also, accept that, one violent crime is one too many. One death as a result of knife crime or any form of crime is one too many. And people have a fear of crime. Because the students will fear of crime, and crime figures and crime itself, as we can see through crime figures. But
Yeah.
people, do have a fear of crime. So we got to look at police resources. So it's a fact that the Metropolitan Police still need more police officers.
Yeah.
When I came onto the London Assembly, the Met had around 30,000 officers, just underneath 30,000, and we
Wow.
were in danger of falling to an all-time low of 27,000. Money
Wow.
is important here, but it's also a question of how you spend the money. And the Metropolitan Police have had cuts of £1 billion over the last 10 years. And what Mayor Sadiq Khan did was, through a use of business rates for the first time by a London mayor, but also his share of the council tax, which is called the police precept. He managed not only to stabilize police numbers at 30,000, but we actually increased numbers in London, where we are now around 33,000. And 1,300 extra officers actually have been recruited under Mayor Khan's administration. But that's not enough. We need more. So
Yeah.
the government said that they're going to give 20,000 police officers, going to fund 20,000 police officers nationally. The London Assembly asked for 5,000 of those officers to go to London, and I must say all political parties joined supported me in my motion. Mayor Khan and the commissioner asked for 6,000, 5,000, 6,000. It all makes a difference. To date, we only got around just under 2,000 of those officers. So a campaign continues for more police resources for London. So we can't get away from the resources issue. But at a London level, Sadiq has spent a record £1.08 billion on frontline policing, and I think that needs to be acknowledged. There are also other initiatives like the Violent Crime Task Force that actually go out, based on intelligence from the community, from various sources, to disrupt gang activity before it results in a serious crime. You got what is called violence suppression units. In the one in Croydon is, people talk about that, where different agents, where the police can concentrate, zoom in on particular problem area. Also, I think partnership working with the local community, with other agencies is so important. And let us not also forget, you also need to provide, to have youth activities. Youth service provision in London National has been cut over the last 10 years. And, it's about investing in our young people to prepare them for the future. And Sadiq set up a Young Londoners Fund. Around £70 million is going to youth-related activity. It's called diversion activity. So yes, accept that that crime is a serious issue for people in London. It will dominate the mayoral campaign, which has already started. But what your listeners have got to know is that there are resources being put into our police force by Sadiq with whatever powers he's got. But we need a government, central government, to give Sadiq the extra resources that he needs. And all London parties backed my motion. All the opposition parties backed my motion, calling for London to be treated fairly and properly by the government.
Yes, you very rightly said that the number of police is highly essential in order to prevent the violence and crimes in the society. We heard that the government introduced or announced that they are going to recruit 20,000 police officers in 3 years' time span, and the first 6,000 will be recruited by the September 2020. So, do you think that make a little
Of
different?
course. Right. Now, firstly, look, recruiting police officers is not a straightforward exercise, unlike other jobs, or many jobs. You got to actually firstly recruit, then train. You can't just put police officers, a trainee officer out of the streets just like that. They got to
Yes.
go to a training program. Every single police officer out there on the streets of London and other cities, will help. And I just wish that the government would actually speed things up. People, want action. They want it now. And as we saw with the tragic death of Sarah Everard, that tragic incident in Waltham Forest. One or two of the incidents that you mentioned, Buck and Dagenham.
And one
I'm not
incident
saying
in
that not
Banbury as
policing
well.
that is as an answer in itself, is how the police are used, how they're deployed. We need community support, community intelligence, everyone working together. But having more police, of course, does help. You know, even the commissioner, all the experts, everyone say that austerity cuts kill. You know, and we just cannot get away from the fact that the overstretched, under-resourced police service needs our support. Even the commissioner herself, I mean, she's politically.
Your voice disappeared.
So much. There's only so much you can cut, right? You can only cut to the bone, but after that, inevitably the cuts will fall on frontline policing, and we don't want that.
Very good. Unmesh, one thing, when we talk about the recruitment of the police, we also heard that the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and the London Assembly, they passed a motion that they are going to recruit the more BME communities members, and also they will establish a good interactions from the Black Londoners with the police, and they will have that kind of the strong community strength in order to prevent the crime and violence in the society. Most of the Black Londoners, they feel hesitant to talk with the police. What is the progress of that motion?
So, Sadiq has got an action plan, which I welcome. Before his action plan was launched, I actually did my own report, Policing with Consent, which is available on my GLA website or on my Twitter handle at Unmesh Desai. I know you can also see it on Facebook as well. But I talked about 5 key areas.
Right.
It was an attempt to guide the debate. Firstly, London's police force, and this goes for the whole country, has got to reflect the diversity of London in terms of gender, race, religion, all aspects
Yeah.
of our society. So that means you've got to recruit. But recruitment isn't enough. If people join and then for various reasons, bad experiences, leave the police force, that was the point of recruiting them and leave it after, a year, 2 years, whatever, not after many years of service. So we've got to look at how to retain police officers. That's so important. And then the third area is training. What sort of police training, what sort of training do they get in policing a diverse, multicultural, cosmopolitan society like London? Then also, training itself is not enough. It's how the training is applied in practice on the streets. So stop and search, which is a controversial issue, has been for many, many years now. What is called Section 60, where the police have powers to stop and search, over a wide geographical area, and without sort of reasonable suspicion. So police practices how they work on the streets. And then the last area, but very, very important, is how do the police engage with the community, talk to people with
Right.
community groups. That is missing in London. There is no structured liaison between the police and the community. And in the 80s, after the Brixton troubles, 1981, Lord Scarman's inquiry recommended the setting up of police community consultative groups. In each borough, London borough, we had a police community group, consultative group, where you can meeting twice bi-monthly, every 2 months or every 3 months, where you could talk about issues that had happened, also how the police are going to plan for the next few months, and people could talk frankly about interaction with the police, about crime, about everything. We don't have that right now. So this action plan is very welcome. In training alone, he's investing £1.2 million. He's talked, there was an announcement a few days ago about community monitoring groups, monitoring the use of stop and search and so on. So let us wait and see how his action plan pans out. But recruitment and retention is so important. And look, Muazzam, these are not new issues. 40, 50 years ago, there were reports on policing, not just Black Londoners, but other BME communities, how they feel they're not policed for, but policed against. And we are still talking about all these issues 50 years on. we got to get to grips with this with the situation. We don't need more inquiries. We've had so many inquiries. There are about 100 recommendations in the form of various inquiries about racism in prisons, in the police service, that are waiting to be implemented in racism in our society. What we need is a political will, action at all levels, and we need to do it now.
Right. You very well explained, Unmesh. One concern which is most of the Londoners and the community members they have, what the COVID breaches are at the moment is the police has been given some powers by the parliament, by the act of the parliament in terms of the COVID regulations and COVID laws. So police now can stop and search anyone that whether or not people who are moving around, they are in breach of the COVID law and COVID restrictions. So, do you really think that this is the duty of the police when we really need the police in our streets, in our roads, and the police need to do their best job in order to prevent the crimes in the society, street crimes, drugs, crimes are, and the antisocial behavior is at peak?
Well, look, I mean, the statistics are very worrying. You talked about the coronavirus laws. What we've seen is Black Londoners are twice as likely to be fined under the new coronavirus laws. There are other stats that are also statistics that are disturbing. If you're Black in Londoner, you're 4 times more likely to be searched than a white Londoner.
Your camera goes little down if you
Right.
can.
If you're a
Yeah, this is fine. Yeah.
if you're a Black Londoner, you're 4 times more likely to be searched than a white Londoner. If you're a young Black man, you're 15 times more likely to be searched than your white counterparts. Black Londoners also 4 times as likely to have a taser used against them, and as I said a few seconds ago, are twice as likely to be fined under coronavirus laws. So we got to look at the impact of laws like the coronavirus legislation on specific communities who feel that they are not being policed fairly, that the police are using disproportionate tactics against them. And until you actually can win the trust and confidence of the various communities that make up London, then you simply will find it hard to police with the community's consent. And this area that I'm very worried about. And this is where both my report, but also more importantly, Sadiq's action plan, talking about concrete measures, such as monitoring the use of stop and search. Now, look, stop and search is in the news, on a daily basis. Done properly, intelligence-led, it is a necessary tool in the fight against crime. We all want safe streets. The families of people who lost their loved ones, they want stop and search, but it's going to be done properly, fairly, proportionately. We got now body-worn video cameras. The biggest rollout of body-worn video cameras has happened through the Metropolitan Police, where every officer, out there in the streets, has a camera which protects them as well, because sometimes they do face unfair accusations.
Yeah.
But it also protects, equally important, the right of the person being stopped and searched to make sure that things are done properly. There are issues about how these cameras are used, operational issues. The principle of body-worn video cameras is something that I welcome. But the statistics don't look good when it comes to race and policing in London, use of coronavirus legislation, stop and search, and so on.
Thank you very much. And maybe one thing which is I want to ask you, the Mayor of London introduced one model which was applied in Glasgow, and that was very successful, which is the Violent Crime Task Force. I want you to comment on that. The violence reduction units and
Violent crime reduction unit.
yeah,
Indeed.
yeah.
Indeed. Glasgow have done it very successfully, and
But in
Birmingham.
London, do you think it's very successful or no?
I mean, from what I've been told, it's paying results. But we went to Birmingham to look at the West Midlands police as well. Now, look, Glasgow's got different issues, a different, London's a very diverse city, much bigger
Right.
in population-wise, but the principles of what Glasgow were doing and are doing. So Sadiq set up the Violent Crime Reduction Unit, and essentially the principles are this, so that your listeners, what I want to tell your listeners is that what is being done to address the issue of crime. So it brings together all the different agencies. It's not rocket science, but it was done in the 1980s. But it's got to be done consistently. You got to have a long-term strategy, fund it properly, and not give up on it. Because no point in doing this sort of work, bringing different agencies together, and then after 2-3 years saying there's no money to do this work. You've got to influence each generation, as it grows up, and think ahead to future generations for the program to have an impact. So you got social workers, teachers. It's like treating crime as a disease. Yes, you have enforcement action in terms of policing on the streets to stop violent crime. But then you look at the underlying causes of the crime, or to use the health analogy, the disease, and their education, youth services, teachers, so important. One thing I'm glad that the Metropolitan Police have affirmed their commitment to having dedicated schools officers, safer schools officers, because that is where you got to address the issue of crime. Our attitude towards women, young girls, it's education from an early age in schools, respect for others and so on. So we've got to think long term. And what the Violent Crime Reduction Unit does, and the London Assembly Police Committee, we scrutinized them a few weeks ago to ask them their progress after 18 months, and also all these things look good on paper. What's actually happening in practice? Is it making an impact? We ask for figures, concrete figures. I know it's early days, but 18 months on, we said we want to see some signs that the money being spent is working. Do you need more resources and so on? So what is important, as I say, is a principle of partnership, but it's got to be kept going over a long period, 10 years and more, to have an impact, because you got to influence not this generation but future generations. Well, obviously this generation is important as well, but you could change the mindset, violence against women, through sort of education in schools and so on.
So, Unmesh, when you say that we need the cooperation of the agencies, does it mean the agencies, law enforcement agencies, or the organizations? For example, the organization you mentioned, schools, colleges.
Of everyone, really. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but at the end of the police on their own cannot police their way, as they keep on saying. It's not an excuse. They cannot police their way out of the knife crime epidemic that we've had in London over recent years. It's about joint working, partnership. Yes, the police are at the front line. They have the powers to arrest. They are the enforcement agency, working with council enforcement officers and other sort of enforcement agencies. But then it's about teachers, about schools, about our health service, about social services. I mean, a lot of the issues are to do with drugs and mental health. So, how do we involve drugs agencies, mental health agencies, other support agencies in helping young, vulnerable people? One of the issues that, for instance, that we have, which has got national prominence now, is what is called county lines, which means that gangs in big cities, use young people who are very vulnerable, often coming from a very a background where they've had a lot of personal problems, emotional problems, are often sort of living on their own. They are then recruited and exploited by these gangs to take drugs to small towns and cities. It's a national issue. British Transport Police, we met them the other day. They formed a partnership with some other police forces to try to disrupt the county line gangs. But just a small example of how we need everyone to work together. Yes, enforcement, but then the young vulnerable people who are recruited by these gangs, what issues have they got? How can we help them? Education, jobs, if they're vulnerable, mental health issues, and so on. I went to a college in East London about a year ago, and the person who I met from the college, she told me something that was very revealing and disturbing. Members of a gang had actually joined the college to identify young, vulnerable students who they could then recruit, because the college actually specialized in courses for people with learning disabilities, amongst other things. That is how sophisticated these people can be. Actually joining a college not to study, but to actually pray to find out who there was, could be exploited, who was vulnerable, befriend them, but with the view to getting them into gang activity.
Exactly.
Frightening, but realistic as well. But the police are on top of it. They've been, I haven't got the figures, but it was in the national news. They've disrupted so many gangs, made so many arrests, and so on. So that's good news.
That is very good news. One thing which is, Unmesh, a lot of people in the community, the faith leaders and other community members, they think that, for example, you said the cut of the police is one of the biggest challenge to prevent the crime and violence. We agree with that, and we agree what you said. The police, we cannot just recruit the police and send to the streets. They have to follow the proper training procedures and their time period spending in the academy. But the issue is, why not the government is taking such kind of the team recruitment, the frontline volunteer officers, the safety officers who can have some authority to report any incident or any crime within the community and society, and they can keep their eye on within the society, because nowadays we don't have the police officers who are riding a bicycle in the streets and going everywhere, bobby on beat. So I just want to know that why the other angles, you have given so many examples and you have given so much the plan, the safety and security plan of the London Assembly, but why this part is ignored? Because the volunteers can be recruited, they can be given a quick training. They are not going to use any weapons or anything. They are just wearing a specific uniform, which will give a great impact, because they are different from the normal, ordinary person who is not well trained how to respond to any crime or violence. This is just a matter of reporting.
And I totally agree with you. You made a very good point there in your question, if I understand correctly. So at one time we had neighborhood watch schemes. They don't exist anymore. Certainly not in the way that at one time it was official scheme. People in the community coming together to keep a watch on crime, liaising with the police, passing on intelligence, say if there are spate of burglaries in the area,
Yeah.
alerting neighbors, talking to people, look, be safe, be vigilant. So those sort of community initiatives are so important. We also got special constables and police community support officers.
Yeah.
Special constables, at the London Assembly, we actually, always put a case for them, that people from the community, giving some of their.
Your voice disappeared, Umesh.
Sorry, the phone rang. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Who give some of their working hours to Police London. And they know the community, they live in the community, and who better to police the streets than people who actually live in the locality that they police. But that is not a substitute, all right? Or if you don't substitute, a poor substitute for a well-resourced a professional police service, and that can only come, as I said, from central government funding. £1 billion of cuts over 10 years. You can't just dismiss that with a stroke of your hand. With a wave of your hand, what you're investing now is just making up for a little bit of what of the cuts that have actually been implemented over 10 years. Huge cuts. So we need to think long term. We need to think strategically. We need to make sure that our police service and our other public services are well resourced and well funded. So the things that you talk about, community volunteers, the neighborhood watch schemes, very important. I'm sorry, they're not addressing the fundamental issue of a well-resourced police service. The other parts all help. They're all components. And people will feel more confident, because at the end of the day, volunteers don't have the powers to arrest and so on. They don't have the equipment. They don't have the training. Very difficult situations. If criminals or people with knives in the streets, you can't expect, people have not been trained to deal with such situations, who don't have the resources to deal with violent criminals. Only the police service can do that.
Thank you very much, Unmesh. I just need to go for a quick short break. And after the break, I want you to tell us about the Women Night Safety Charter, about what the London Assembly has introduced previously. So after the break, we will join again. Please stay tuned.
Thank you.
Welcome and a good day to all our listeners. I hope you're all keeping well. Today we'll be talking about what we can expect to see as children return to face-to-face education. Schools and colleges are now open to all pupils and they remain the best place for children and young people to be. We'll now hear from Mrs. Rita Rajput, who has been a long-standing teacher, assistant head, and now the owner of Trinity Tuition in Sutton Coldfield, to discuss the extensive safety measures that have been put in place. Rita ji, first of all, a very warm welcome to you.
Hello, Peter. Thank you for inviting me to Radio Excel. As part of Trinity Tuition, our first priority has been to ensure that all our students have received continued and excellent education, as well as the much needed social interaction and emotional support for their well-being. It is now equally, if not more important for all students to have a safe return back to schools and colleges in order to resume their educational experience. There are indeed, as we know, huge advantages to children and young people being in schools and colleges, not just for educational reasons, but also for their health, mental and physical well-being. So it's very important that this message reaches our Asian communities.
Rita ji, can you tell us about the COVID-19 testing aspect and its availability in schools?
Well, Peter, twice weekly COVID-19 testing is now available for all secondary school and college students, as well as all education staff. And as an additional protective measures, your listeners will be reassured to know that regular rapid COVID-19 testing is available for parents of school and college children and any adults in their households and support and childcare bubbles.
That's great to hear, Rita ji. Now, it's a fact that around 1 in 3 people who have COVID-19 have no symptoms and could be spreading it to friends and family without knowing. So it's vital that we maintain a system of testing to help protect our loved ones. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Peter. The more of us that are testing twice weekly, the more we can protect each other and keep everyone safer. Regular rapid testing is free, it's easy to get and easy to do. And we should remind everyone to continue to adhere to the government guidelines by wearing our face masks, travelling safely, making space at school gates, and washing hands to prevent transmission.
Rita ji, any final points for our listeners?
Yes, I'd like to add that parents can feel confident that all schools have protective measures in place to support schools remaining open safely. This includes year group bubbles, temperature monitoring, increased hygiene, ventilation and staggered break and lunch times, as well as, of course, staggered entry and exit times from the building. This will prevent transmission of the virus and keep everyone safer in the school community.
Thank you very much for joining me today, Rita ji, and sharing valuable advice with our listeners. As we know, schools can remain the best place for children and young people to be. All schools have put in extensive protective measures in place to support them in remaining open safely. Let's keep each other safe, and remember, testing is free and easy to get. To find out more, please visit nhs.uk/coronavirus.
Revive FM
94.0 on the radio,
on your mobile,
and online.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Muazzam Ali Sandhu, and you are watching and listening over Shore Your Voice with Muazzam Ali Sandhu. And today we are talking about the safety and security issues in London, and also the prevention of violence and crime. And our guest is Unmesh Desai, who is the chair of London Assembly Police and Crime Committee. We were talking about the core issues, that how how we can handle these things, and how the government is playing their role. What is the real role of the police, and also how the police is dealing with these things, that so many knife crimes are happening, and during the COVID-19, the drug offenses are highly increased, and antisocial behavior is highly concerned. People are having so much stress and depressions during this pandemic. Recent incident happened in London, which alarmed a lot, which raised the concerns for the whole community. And ladies and gentlemen, the one of the serious incident happened in Waltham Forest, wherein a stabbing happened and a young boy was stabbed to killed at the time when he was delivering the branded jacket to one of his buyer. And also the Sarah Everard, she was from South London, who was kidnapped and then murdered. These are incidents are highly concerned for all of us. We went to the break, and after the break, our guest due to join us due to some reasons. I think they are joining us very shortly, wherein we will discuss about the crime prevention strategies of the London Assembly, especially for the women's, wherein they had the violence reductions unit. We talked about the violence crime task force of London Assembly, and Unmesh Desai, he was telling us the strategies and the work flow they have done during this hard and difficult time. Of course, this is not anything we can do or the government can do overnight. It takes time, but eventually, this is the strategies and plannings which works. These are the policies which works and the roadmap in order to reach at certain destination. The successes only happen if you continue work on such roadmaps. If you change strategy, if you're changing plans, then of course the results will not be the same. So Unmesh Desai is joining us again. Hello, Unmesh.
Apologies for that. Apologies. I
No,
got
no, no, it's
disconnected.
absolutely fine. No, 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 absolutely fine. We
I
do
look forward
understand.
to the day when I can come and see you and take part in the discussion face to face.
Face to face,
Your
yes.
viewers are not
Yes.
inconvenienced by technological interruptions. Apologies to viewers. I'm sorry.
No, no,
Sorry,
it's
but I can't
absolutely
help it.
fine.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You are back again. We and I and all the viewers and listeners, they are enjoying this very informative show, your briefings and the information you provided them, because everyone was concerned and they are concerned due to the safety and security issues. So before the break, I just said that the London Assembly, they had about the Women Night Safety Charter, the tackling violence against women and girls. So, can you please tell us that what the steps London Assembly has took about the Women's Safety Charter?
Well, I think the tragic death of Sarah Everard has thrown into sharp focus the very serious issues, ongoing issues of violence against young girls and women in our society. And I
Yes,
think we've got to take a step back and look at some fundamental issues here. How do we see the role of women and young girls in our society? And it's got to start at school. Respect, education. This is where I said earlier, influencing, people growing up, future generations to come. And women have got the right. It's a male problem, the violence towards women and girls. Women have got the right to walk our streets without fear of being attacked or abused or whatever. So let me just point out one initiative that I've been working on from the London Assembly. And of course, MP Stella Creasy, this is a lot of credit. She's the MP for Walthamstow.
yes,
It's about recording as a form of hate crime, gender-based hate crime, which is, people think it's a small issue, but it's that behavior that if it's not recorded and recognized, wolf whistling or other form of misogynistic sort of harassment towards young girls and women. I mean, the study after study shows the sexual harassment that women face in our society, of harassment of all types, and often women don't more well not often more often than not women don't report it, especially young girls, thinking that nothing can will happen, or that is just part of of growing up. Well, it's not part of society. We're going to challenge it at every step, firmly, unequivocally, and using all the powers at our disposal. So the House of Lords, this domestic abuse bill now going through Parliament, and the House of Lords accepted an amendment to recognize gender-based hate crime. Some police forces already record gender-based hate crime. In 2016, I asked the Metropolitan Police whether they would consider recording such hate crime, so we can build up a picture of the scale of harassment that women and young girls in a society sort of face. So initially, like the night safety charter. So Sadiq has got someone called Amy Lammy, who's a night czar. So she's responsible for the London's nighttime economy, or because or the many aspects of the nighttime economy in London fall under a remit. And so when I say she's responsible, she will look after nighttime economy issues on behalf of the Mayor of London, and clearly safe traveling on the tube, women going to work at all hours. They need to be able to feel safe to travel, harassment in our social places, in venues, and so on. So the charter, it does say, initially, like a charter, give people a commitment to sign up to, that will take all steps to ensure that women are safe. I mean, there are other initiatives the government has recently announced. Plainclothes police officers going into music venues, into social sort of places. That I'm not sure whether that's a gimmick or not, to be frank, because an establishment that is licensed, I should say licensed committee of Newham Council, they've got one of the objectives to make sure that their customers feel safe. And it's what happens when women leave the premises, and are attacked on the streets or whatever. And so I think it's a problem. It's an issue that we've got to deal with as society, education, proper policing. I mean, you look at rape convictions in London, appalling 3% of cases end up in court, and people are convicted. What sort of message do they send out to women who want to report sexual crime or sexual harassment? And also the time it takes for cases to come to court, around 2 years. Well, people, have gone through horrific experiences. And also, I must say this, our starting point must be, we believe you. So Barking and Dagenham Council, that I know you're very familiar with their work, Muazzam,
Yes.
The commission looking into domestic abuse, and the commission launched its report very recently, and I took part in the virtual launch. And the hashtag for the evening was, we believe you. We've got to sort of not question people who come forward to report a crime. It's like racial harassment. In the 80s, 90s, thankfully, there's great recognition of race crime and other forms of hate crime. But we had a job to convince society and the people with power, like the police, racial harassment was the issue. You got to believe us when we say we are being racially abused, racially harassed. So likewise with domestic abuse, we got to not challenge people or question people who come forward with an allegation of sexual harassment. The starting point, yes, we believe you, right? Let's look at what the evidence is. So it's about believing people. It's about arresting people, using appropriate legislation, arresting the perpetrators, making sure the victims get confidence as the case goes through the criminal justice system, that the prosecution presses the case properly. Our courts are overstretched right now, particularly because of COVID. There's a backlog of cases, but judges get a full understanding of the issues and the traumatic experience the victim has gone through. Sentencing, is effective. And that sends a clear message to society. So there's so much work across in so many areas that we could do in this so important area of domestic abuse, domestic violence, sexual harassment, and abuse of young girls and women. But I repeat the point that we've got to think very long term, and this is where education is so important. Respect for your fellow, your other citizens, for people of another gender.
Your camera, can you move little camera up?
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so I hope that, as I say, it's actually a number of fronts: policing, education, initiatives like the Night Safety Charter, making sure that all our establishments, social venues, music places, restaurants, they all have a responsibility to ensure. You're just because someone has left your premises. Well, if a restaurant or someone is concerned of the possible safety, of one of their customers, then I would say that it's important that they actually ensure that their customer, simple things like, are you okay? Do you want us to call you a taxi or whatever? Again, license taxis. I know
So
that
you are
taxis.
talking, you want to say that all of these places
What I'm saying is that we all have a responsibility. Owners of
all
licensed
have
premises,
collective.
restaurants.
So you're talking about collective responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, the minicab trade and others, great steps have been taken to improve safety, licensing of minicab drivers, of black taxis. I mean, we had a very sad case of John Wardboy, a black taxi driver, who actually was responsible for numerous sexual crimes. But the industry is progressing. There are more and more safety measures
But
taken.
Unmesh,
So
do
it's a
you
society, collective responsibility at all levels.
all levels? But Unmesh, do you think that all of these organizations you are saying, the workplaces, the cinemas, the social pubs and clubs, and all of these people and other school, colleges, or any other businesses, state agents, wherever the people go, the women's go, do you think all of those business places, their staff, their organizations, they are well trained to handle any violence against women if any incident happened? For example, you mentioned about the hate crime, you mentioned about the sexual harassment. So are they trained, or the police or government is providing them training, or it is the duty of the directors or business owners or the organization's leaders to provide that training to their staff members?
Well, look, a lot of business, except for small businesses and so on. But there are a number of things people can do. I mean, from security, from CCTV cameras, from training of the staff, taking advice from the police, taking advice from other support agencies. It might seem small, but every small step counts. Every bit of action, and I repeat the point, is for all of us: small businesses, restaurants, Transport for London, which of course is a major, massive organization.
Does these guidance supported by the Act of Parliament or just the government guidance?
Well, no, there is no specific act as such, right? But I think it's a moral duty. It's in terms of licensing objectives. When a premise is given a license, then there are certain obligations that they've got to carry out. But it comes down to, I think, will that people should ensure the safety of their customers, and generally it's about looking out for one another. And of course, the police have got an important role to play. But the earlier conversation we were having, on their own they can't. There's a lot they can do.
Okay,
That's
one
the
more point.
possibility.
One more point, which I think the government has more to do, and the local authorities need to do more, which is according to the Women's Safety Charter. It says that the public places need to be reviewed, and there shouldn't be any black spot where any criminals can hide or any crime can happen. I also refer a recent incident happened in Maysbrook Park, where the young girls were raped
Sure.
when she went for a walk. So she was grabbed to the bushes. So
Yeah.
in all of the parks, they have black spots. They have these kind of the places.
Yeah.
They have. I often go to the parks and go for a walk, and we see in the bushes. We saw notice there are rubbish there. There are some wine and beer empty bottles there, and cigarettes butts there. So it means that there are some people who come there and stays some time there. So what do you think the governments can do, because local organizations or any workers, they can't do anything about that?
Well, again, I think you raise a very important issue. Our public spaces, people should feel safe to go. I mean, parks, when I was a councillor, I was pleased to make this point. It's all very well investing in our parks, but if people don't feel safe to use the parks, right?
Yes,
So safety consideration should form, a part of our park strategy. And this is where engineering solutions are so important. Lighting, CCTV used appropriately. I mean, in years gone by, we had park rangers looking after our parks.
right.
Well, why not bring back some of these things? I'm a great believer in park wardens and so on, much
Yeah.
in old fashion, but
I never see any CCTV in the park.
yeah, but anyways, so when new housing schemes, I was set on planning committees, and these are things that are often overlooked. You actually ask questions of developers. How are you taking safety measures into account? I mean, cuts in public service. I'm sorry to come back to the point of public services, but so many stations now, ticket officers shirt, or
Yes,
especially on the rail network, uh, late at night. Often, there's a side road going into the station, as opposed to tube stations where you can come straight out onto the, a main
right.
road, or a relatively busy road. So lighting, security, in terms of policing, British Transport Police, bus station staff, and so on. All this, are, in terms of parks, as I say, again, there are so many practical measures that a council can be doing. It's not necessarily a governmental thing, well, it's more of a council thing, the maintenance of parks and so on.
Last
But
thing,
creating the sense of
yeah,
safety, the space
that's
where people feel that they can go out and enjoy themselves, and not sort of be put off
feeling
by,
threat
will I
or
be attacked?
concerned. Yeah, that's correct. Unmesh, last thing, this is almost we are near to end of a show. I want you to guide us, the listeners, that for example, what trainings is available for the general member of the public who are going to the park or witness any violence there, or the bystanders, how to respond the any criminal activity or any violence happening. Most of the bystanders, they just stay neutral. They don't want to get involved. They just go home or disappear. Even they are very important witness of the crime.
Well, the important thing is here. I know, again, this is seems a straightforward answer, but people often, it's important to ring the police up, to notify, to be prepared to be a witness. We can't have this attitude, shrug your shoulders, and obviously the police, do give practical advice. Don't get us involved in this situation if this is dangerous, or So the important thing is to alert 999. The most everyone now has a mobile phone. It should, if possible, I think many agencies, now people take cameras and so take images, pictures with their cameras. But if you see someone in a state of distress, don't just walk by. They could have had something serious could have happened to them,
Yeah,
or they might have gone through some bad experience. It
yeah,
might be some other issue, but it's about that caring, society, helping one another, offering to help. But in terms of, if you see a crime itself, it's report it straight away, and be prepared to, if you got any, like with Sarah Everard, the police made an appeal for dashboard cameras and CCTV cameras in people's homes. Ring, they even made an appeal for, people now, you have Ring technology, the doorbell, and that is how they got a lot of picture materials. I don't know, not out of the evidence that led to the rest of the police officer who now been charged with the murder of Sarah Everett in an abduction. But is that sort of practical help?
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And
And
one final point, I did talk about, in terms of support services. Sadiq has announced a scheme to fund more money for domestic violence support services. So again, that's an example of the sort of work that we should be doing. It's also about helping victims of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is not just about someone being physically beaten up. It takes this financial abuse. I've come across cases where the man controls the finances of the woman, not allowing her access to a bank account. Is financial abuse, is emotional abuse, and is physical abuse. Domestic abuse takes a variety of forms, and it's about recognizing, the particular type of abuse. And I'm glad to say there are so many agencies out there now offering advice and support on different types of domestic abuse. About a third of reported crimes, are down to domestic abuse crimes.
Very valuable advices you given, Unmesh. One thing, because this is just end of our show, I want you to give overall the message in today's conversation, the final bit points in 30 seconds, what you want to tell our listeners
Well,
about safety and
I don't want to bring party politics into this, but there's an important set of elections coming up on May the 6th, where you'll be electing your London Mayor, London Assembly members, both for the constituency. I represent City and East London, and what is called the list candidates who represent the whole of London. Please register for a vote, because you cannot influence society if you're not on the, if you cannot take part in elections. It's your civic duty, and there's no point in complaining if you're not happy with the way things are. And ask for a postal vote, because that way you can vote from home safely, early. Take part, play a full role in society. That's my message. I think that's about 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you so much, Unmesh. You are always brilliant. So nice of you, and hopefully we will see you again once.
Thank you for inviting me. And can I wish you and all your listeners, please stay safe. The virus is still out there. I know the government guidelines are being relaxed slowly. We spent a year in lockdown, but
Yes.
the different parts of the world where the virus is, in India, there's a new variant, double mutation, they call it.
Yeah,
And
in
get
Pakistan
vaccinated.
as well.
Take your turn when it comes to getting vaccinated. Do not believe all the rumors and false propaganda that these vaccines are dangerous. My 85-year-old mother has had both her jabs. She took it on the second day back in December. I've taken my first jab. Doesn't matter what vaccine it is, Oxford or whatever, Pfizer.
Yes.
Take whatever is available. They all work. And there are
Yeah.
millions of people in the world out there who are dying to get a vaccine. Here in this country, you are being given the vaccine. So please, please, please take it. Spread the message. Get vaccinated. Be safe. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much, Unmesh.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Through Minhaj Welfare Foundation.